Okay, so over here in Photoshop, I'm going to open my first texture to add texture to it, and I'm going to do, I guess, my mirror first. So I'm going to select the AO map, which is the dark black and white one on the right, and then I'm also going to select the UV layout for the mirror so that I know where my lines are. I'm going to open those in Photoshop. This would be in GIMP for you if you use GIMP. Um, okay, so I'm going to open the UV one, select all. It's hard to see right now because it's against the transparent background. Copy, close that out, edit, paste in place. Not just paste, but paste in place so that it lines up exactly as it is in Blender over the AO layer, which I'm going to take the lock off of that layer. Okay, so now, and I usually name this layer UV because I know those are my UV lines. And now I know where I can texture. So I'm just gonna apply a simple, I think I might use a metal texture that I have. Let's see, file open, textures. I really like to use this texture a lot, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna use it in this case. Whatever textures you choose to use, sometimes it takes you a couple of tries to see what looks better on your project. So let's see how this stretches out to the shape of the mirror. Also, another handy tool I'm going to do a video on is Puppet Warp, which allows you to distort a texture according to the shape you need, which is good for texturing sometimes if you want to put it into the perspective of the object. And that's called Puppet Warp. I'll do a video on that. So let's see if I add this to multiply. That looks nice to me, so I'll go with that and see how that does. Now I'm unsure if I want to leave it silver or not, but I can always change the color in World, or I can come back and change it on the texture here. So as for the mirror texture, I think usually I just do something simple like a gradient. So let me select this area on the right for the mirror face, and I believe that this is the mirror face and this is the back of the mirror. So I'm just going to put a simple gradient, actually not on the whole mirror, on the mirror face, just to indicate a slight reflection that it is a mirror face. And sometimes the way I do that is I go to my adjustment layer and I want to add a gradient. Or actually, that's not the way I do it. I go to effects and I want to add a gradient overlay here, and I want to do it as a linear. Oops, it's got the wrong layer select. Okay, I needed to create a new layer. Sorry, new layer, edit, fill the selection with white, just because it needs some pixels in there to apply the effects to. And now I can go back to effects to gradient overlay, and it's going to apply my gradient there. If Photoshop is foreign to you, again, this is just a visual for the overall process that I do for this project. I'll break these things down in later videos on how to do them specifically, but I want to keep a reflected type of gradient there, but I want it to be a little bit lighter. Go with that, put it on multiply, and see how that would look. That's okay. I want to rotate the angle a bit, I think, of the reflection in there. That looks a little better. So select, deselect. Now I want to add a little bit of age to this. So some of the textures I use frequently are like grungy textures, metal textures, which you can find everywhere, especially on some of the texture websites or website that I gave in my video, designer resources. So I'll just lay over the grunge and then I'll put it on like a soft light overlay here. And Sometimes it's a little too strong, so I'll lower the opacity of the layer. And then I can copy this over here, make it a little bit stronger over the metal. Sometimes I try hard light because it gives a different, more of the grunge will appear. Sometimes multiply, sometimes overlay. I think for now I'm gonna stick to, actually I'm gonna open a different grunge texture that I have that I use on everything. Select all, copy, close, edit, paste, and then I have to resize this because it's a very large image, and see how this does over the frame. So set it on soft light, which I like because it gives it a little bit of a variation in the hue. It looks a little aged, a little more aged, so I'm going to delete what I don't want on this side. And then for the back, I'm just gonna put, I think, the back won't be visible, so I think I'm just gonna make it a solid color and then apply the grunge over that too. Doing this in kind of a hurry, so I don't have a lot of time to ponder over options. So I just added a hue saturation adjustment layer over that to get the color. And it would be a little darker because it is behind the frame, so, and then I'm gonna apply this grunge texture to the back and see what that does. It's a little too strong, so I'm just gonna bring it down a little bit. I like that, and that's not the best ever texture for that, but it's simple. So I'm gonna go File, Save As, PNG, and let it override the blank AO texture so that I can preview it over in Blender, which I'm going to jump over and do now. So I'm going to select the oval frame. It's in edit mode. I'm going to go to, it's in object mode. I'm going to go to edit mode now. Make sure it's all selected, and then at the bottom in the UV image editor, I'm going to open the folder for open image, and I'm going to choose the oval mirror AO, which it already had in there. And now it gives me a preview, if I go back to object mode, of what the texture is going to look like on the mesh. So I am mostly pleased with that from what I can tell. I could go into way more detail if I wanted to with highlights and shading and adjusting the texture pattern, whatever you want to do, but this is simple. It's for my group gift, and I'm pleased enough with that. So I'm gonna go back over here to Photoshop, and I'm going to layer, flatten image to get rid of any hidden layers that will cause transparency issues or glitches. Save as a JPEG to avoid any alpha glitch issues, and I'm gonna save as the mirror AO, keep the same name. Go to history, undo that, and save this whole file, the working file for the mirror, in case I want to come back and adjust the textures. So I'm going to do that for all of my frames. I can go ahead and do one of the ones that I'm going to use a picture for, so you can see how I would go about that process. I'm going to choose the AO and the UV layout. Select all, oops. Copy, close, edit, paste in place, and name it my UV layer. And now I can choose to, whatever textures I want for this. I'm gonna go for a wood texture, so go to my textures, wood, and here are some woods that I use. Again, these are all free for commercial use or public domain because that's the only type of resources I use. So I'm going to choose probably this wood, which I already have as a pattern, I think. So edit to find pattern in case I didn't. And I'm going to select, I do a lot of my texturing by patterns, defining them as patterns so that I can get it seamless and adjust the scaling and all of that. So I'm going to go to my adjustment layers, add a pattern adjustment layer. There's the wood. It's too large. The grain is too large, so I'm going to bring it down. Then that's better, maybe 40. Pull it down some, click OK, hit set it on multiply, and I think that's okay. I might adjust the coloring a bit, so I'm going to control and select on my mask, my layer mask, which I'll go over layer masks in another video, and choose hue saturation, so I can alter the color here a bit if I want. I usually like more of a warm or a reddish wood instead of a yellow. Okay, so that's that, and then I want to go and open my grunge file again because I use it to death over all of my work. Let's choose this one. Copy, see how it looks, paste it, set it over everything, and put it on soft light and see how that does. It's too strong, so I'm going to bring it down some, maybe like that. And that's okay for now. And then what I want to do, I want to make sure I don't have any of, take my eraser and erase any parts of that texture, the grunge that I don't want. Now, I don't remember which part is the back of the frame. I do think it's this. This is the back of the frame, so I'm going to double check that, but I'm going to go ahead and put the wood on the back of here too for the frame. I do want it to be a different direction though. I don't, because I have it sideways because I was in a hurry, so let me open that wood again. And I want to edit, or actually image rotate 90 degrees. That's where the grain is going horizontal, and edit define pattern. So now I have the wood grain going horizontal, and I'm going to select the area that I want to pattern, add another pattern adjustment layer, and do 40 because that's what I had on my other piece. And then I'm going to set it on multiply, control click on the mask, and I want to go to the hue saturation layer, make sure I'm on the mask side of it, and I want to fill it with white because everything that is white on a mask layer is visible, and that just added the color, the same hue color tint that I had on these pieces to the back so that it matches. Deselect, and I want to add the grunge to the back of the mirror as well. And actually I want to make this a little bit darker because it would be the back. So I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer and darken it a little bit. I'll explain levels in another video when I talk about adjustment layers. And that's okay. So I'm going to assume this space is open for a picture. So I'm going to go File. So let's just say I'm going to do this process from scratch. I'm going to go over to Blender and close it because my computer is going to freak out on me. Okay, so I'm back over here in my browser, and I'm just going to act like I want to find an image for my frame. So I would just do a search like public domain vintage flowers because I love to use those, and go to images, and I will choose something from a source that I trust, making sure that I'm allowed to use it, that it's free for commercial use or public domain. And let's see, that's something on DeviantArt, so let's click on that just to show you the process. And I'm going to visit the page to make sure that I check the source myself for any terms. Let's see what she has for terms. She says you can use them outside of DeviantArt, you don't have to leave a link back. You are free to use them for personal and commercial work, so you don't need to ask permission. So The only thing she asks is that you don't redistribute the images as is. So these are safe to use. So if I want to use these, I would click download, and it looks like sometimes instead of the file downloading directly, it'll just open the image, so you can right click and save image as to wherever you want to save your image. I go into my art and design folder, and I have a clip art folder and vintage, and I have a floral folder, and I'm gonna save it there, which I probably already have this image, which I do. So I'm just gonna find it from my already folder there, but this is how you would do that. And so I'm gonna close out of this, close this out, come back over to Photoshop, open my clip art folder, vintage, floral, whoops, that's fruit, floral, and so I have a bunch here, and I think I'm gonna use there are some that I tend to use a lot, and sometimes I try to do a little different. Let me open this one and see if there's one here that I want to use. I don't think so. I'm getting picky. So sometimes it's a bit of a process to decide on things. Okay, I'm going to take a minute and choose, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I figured out that I want to use this image, and I want to use the roses that are here in the bottom corner, so I'm going to just drag a selection, edit, copy, close this file, and edit, paste. So now I have my file. Already I'm seeing that there's a bit of an issue around the edges, that it wasn't cleaned up 100%, so I'm gonna just get my eraser tool. There are various ways to do this. You can do it with masking too, but I'm just gonna get rid of those bits of white there to clean it up. And then I'm gonna move it in whatever direction I want to move it to. And so I think I'll go with that for now. I think it's a little saturated, so I'm going to go with my layer selected, image, adjustments. I'm just going to apply this directly to the layer as opposed to an adjustment layer that overlays, because I don't mind just editing it directly. And I'm going to bring the saturation down some, so it's a little more vintage. Click OK. And then the white background is bugging me, so File, Open, come to Art, Design, Textures, Paper. I'm going to add a subtle, like a paper background to it, because sometimes I don't like just plain pure white, because it doesn't really have the aged look to it. So I'm going to bring this down under, let me set it on, try soft light, it's too light, try multiply, that's better. So I'm going to move it into place, and then I'm going to select around the area, inverse, select and inverse my selection and delete off of that paper layer so that I don't have the paper covering other parts of the frame. And that looks good to me. I'm going to turn off my UV lines, and I'm going to go File, Save As, Ping, and override the square frame. And I'm going to call it 1A because I'm using the same AO to texture the other frames. So let me go over here to Blender, open my file again so I can preview the texture, which you can do the previewing process for your textures in World. I'm just not doing that right now because it would lag out my computer really bad. So open the frames file, and I already previewed the mirror. I'm gonna do, whoops, see, Blender is starting to lag again. I'm gonna click on the right side frame that I want to use this picture on. Go into Edit, select all by hitting the A key, slide over here, open image, and I want to open 1A, square frame 1A, open. And there it gives me the preview of that on the frame. And that is okay. Let me deselect the selection so I don't have that in the way. And that's okay with me, I like it. So I'm going to go with that, and I'm just going to do the same process for each. You can't see them because the other textures baked over them, but you would just open the individual AO textures for the appropriate parts of your mesh to fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the remaining frames. Now that you have an idea of the process, quickly come over here to Photoshop and save this so I don't lose my work. And then I'll be back. I am now at, I think it is step number 4, which is to upload to SL. I'm going to bring the mesh in, and I have my little platform here where I work. In the background there's a peek of what I'm doing for a vintage fair, which I'm really excited about coming up. But those are going to be gotchas. Oops, I didn't mean to select that. So I'm going to go here to upload model. That's in my inventory. That was from my inventory window. And I'm going to choose, and I'm in the wrong folder. I need to go to my group gift folder, vintage picture frames. And here's the preview. It's hard to see from certain angles. It does have the shadow prim with it. I'm going to choose, sometimes I do my medium LOD the same as my high so that it's a nice good medium. On my low, I'm going to try 200. And that's still pretty poor, so let's see. I think, let me try 300 and see what that does on low. That's pretty bad, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump over to Blender, and here's where all the fun comes, which is trying to figure out how to get a good LOD or a decent LOD and LI and all that. So I need to make a better or low LOD because I don't like how crappy that one is, how deformed it is. So I'm going to go to object mode. I'm going to file, save, copy. Whoops, I've got something selected because Blender is lagging while I'm recording. File, save, copy of this file. This is how I do my LODs when I need to. You might do them a different way. Save this as low because I want to do my low LODs. Then file, open. Gotta open that file I just made called low, which you should be careful not to ever overwrite your original high LOD file with your low ones. And it's not opening. It's taking forever. Okay, and then I'm just gonna turn off textures so I can quickly do this. I'm gonna get I'll do one of them because I have to do this for each frame, and so I'll do one and then I'll come back because it's gonna take me forever. So that was just turning off textures in the N panel, turning off texture solid. So I'm gonna select this. I'll do for the oval, and I'll go over to my modifiers, add a decimate modifier. It's a quick way to do your own LOD if it works for you. And then I'm going to slide the ratio down some so that it's pretty low, but it's not as horrible as it was in the uploader. Try that, click apply, go to edit, see how many verts it went down. 122 that's fine. So I'm going to keep that as it is, and I'm going to go to the next frame and do the same thing. I'm going to do that for each one, and I'll be back. Okay, so I am back, and I went ahead and fixed my LODs, so I have some better low LOD models. So I'm going to upload again my main LOD, and then I'm going to choose use LOD above for medium. For low, I want to use my low, and for lowest, I use whatever usually because from that distance it doesn't matter as much. At least I don't care for it to matter. And then let's see what it does, what it gives me for my LI. 13 prims, that's really high. But that also could be because of how large it is. So I'm just going to do some testing here. If you don't have the money to test with uploads, you can go on the beta grid to upload stuff for free and test it there. So let me just bring this in and see what is going on with the LI on this. And sometimes when I res it, it's at a very large size, and that will be the problem, which is most likely the case here because it came in kind of big, but it still is a little high in prim or LI. So if I decrease this, I can get it down to 5, which is not too bad at this size. If I bring it down a little more, still 5. If I bring it way down, it still doesn't change. So I think what I'm gonna do, because I'm not completely happy with that, I don't think, is I'm going to go file, upload again, and let me look at my medium for a second here and see if I can't get that a little bit lower. See, I don't like messing with LODs because sometimes they're not very good. See, if I leave that at 10 and upload a physics of a square or a mesh cube, see if that brings it down any. Brought it down to 12 prims. So because I don't have much time to play with this until I can get it down to like 1 or 2 prims, I know I could get this down to probably about 2 prims, but I'm just gonna go with this for now because it is a group gift, and I do have so many projects that are due this coming week. So I'm gonna go with, if I can get it down to 4 or 5 prims, I'm just gonna do that for this case. And so if I turn it around to face me and then size it down some. So that's the thing with LI in mesh, is that sometimes if you increase or decrease, it'll affect the land impact. Okay, so I got it down to 4 prims, so I'm gonna go with that. And I'm going to test out my textures with temporary textures. So the way that I do that is I select, first I'm going to put the shadow on, so go to the texture tab and then go to texture box and choose local, because that's going to go to your computer to fetch textures. And I'm going to go into Second Life. I'm going to go into my group gifts folder and find. So my shadow is here, frame shadow. So that's all set. Now I'm going to apply my mirror. This is a way to check your textures before you pay to upload them, in case you need to make changes. Oval mirror and to the frame. So I applied it to the center face because remember the center face is separate, is able to be textured separately. So now I'm going to apply the same one to the frame, and that looks fine. And then I'm going to come over here, and each frame has separate texturable faces, so I can literally show you by coloring them differently what I'm talking about. And that's what you want for frames, if you want to allow the person to be able to drag their own texture onto the face. So I'm going to take away that coloring and continue uploading my stuff. So for here I have this texture is 1A, I think, and 1A as well. Apply the same, that looks fine. And then I'm going to go and check one of these other ones. Like, I think it was 1C. which is sideways, which I can fix. So this is the part that comes in where you start to try to check for errors, which obviously I have an error there. So I'm going to finish getting these textures applied to the mesh, and I'll be back. So I have textured my frames. Here they are. It's a little hard to see because it's against this crazy grass background, which I just accidentally retextured my platform. So I have to fix that later, but I'm going to set up a little display for the next step, which is, well, actually before I do that, I need to apply the scripts. So I applied my textures. According to step 6, I would next apply any scripts in the content of the object. So I want to put a resize script in there. So I have one that I use, and it's called Perfect Resizer 5.0. So I drag that over, and now the frames can be resized on touch. So when I do that, it resizes them. I'm not sure if you can really see that, but alright, so that's what I want. So the next step I would do is to name the object. So I'm going to call it vintage frame cluster. I'm not feeling very creative at the moment, so this again is just for a free gift. So that's that. And I actually will take a copy of it to my inventory in case the sim crashes and I lose it somehow. I did have to do some tweaking in here. I did put placement images in place of where the next user can drop their own textures onto the frames. So that's kind of how I do that. Okay, so now I want to set up to photograph this for the advertisement and the packaging. So I'm going to just do this kind of low budget style. I'm going to create a background that I can use as a wall, and I'm going to apply a wallpaper texture here. So I'm just going to put one, let me think of which one I want to do. I think I will just do Vintage Crown Molding is one of the newer sets I just created of wallpaper textures. And I'll do, which color am I going to do? Something a little more neutral, like, I'll do the brushed ones. How about sandstone? Is that good? Yeah, I think that's okay. Sandstone. So it's a nice neutral color. Your backgrounds when you photograph shouldn't be too busy or shouldn't conflict or contrast too much with or conflict too much with your item that you're trying to display. So okay, that works. And yeah, I'm not too sure if I like that shadow. I'm seeing it now and it's really bothering me. So unfortunately, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to fix the shadow because see, I don't like the way it's being cast onto the wall. I just really don't like that. So I'm going to go back into Blender, rebake the shadow, and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back now and I went ahead and fixed the shadow. I just had to go into Photoshop and do some tweaking and got it to be a little better. It's still clearly not perfect, but I'm just going to lower the opacity on it some and that will take care of most of that. Okay, so I'm going to, since I'm only going to need to photograph this with a wall background, I don't need to worry about doing a floor scene. So I'm just going to take a picture of the frames this way. I will move this up a little closer so I can get more of the wall trim in there. And I'm going to go to my settings, go to graphics, go to Ultra, which I hate doing because it really makes my graphics card mad. And click OK, and I'm going to go to a good lighting like NOM's Optimal or the Anon Adored Light Explosion 2 is one that I use sometimes. It's a little bright, so let's see, World, Environment Editors, Edit Preset for Sky Presets, and choose the Anon Light Explosion 2, and then I'm going to see if I can play with the way that the light is cast here. Not sure if I like it too much. It's a little too, yeah. I don't know if I like that. Let me try NOM's Optimal, which is a basic go-to for better lighting, and see what I get here. It's a little dark. You can play with it. I mean, if you want some shadows on the wall or whatever, you can just play with the lighting as much as you want. I think it's a little brighter. Right, this is gonna do for the picture, just simple. I'm gonna go photograph, snapshot button, and I'm gonna just save it to my computer, save to disk. And I'm gonna save as, and make sure I'm saving it in the folder where I'm working, where my other working files are, so I can find it. And that looks fine. And I'm gonna close out of that, turn my graphics back down because my computer hates it. Click OK, and then I'm gonna jump over to Photoshop, open the picture that I just took, which is right here, and open a template that I use for my group GIFs, which, let's see, I'll use one from this year because it'll be recent. And here, use one from last month. So this is from last month. I'm just going to go and select all, copy my image, edit, paste it into the template, and place it above the old ones. Get rid of the old stuff because I don't need that. I don't need these. Turn off anything that's not needed. And in my template, I do have some filters set up for the color adjustment, so you can play with that in your template, how you want your items to look. This looks decent to me, and I'm just eyeballing it to make sure that it's pretty centered. And then I'm gonna go to my bow because I like to change the color of my bow at the top. So image adjustments, hue is saturation, and change the coloring to something, to whatever. Maybe not so girly. This is where you can just play around. So yeah, I'm going to go with something like that for now. And then I'm going to change the name of it, of course. Down here, you can set up your templates for your items however you want. This is like a general way to do it. And so I'm going to call these Vintage Cluster, or Vintage, did I call it Cluster Frame? See, my mind is fried half the time that I'm doing this because I forget what I'm doing, what I call things. It's Vintage Frame Cluster. So I want to do that the right way. So Vintage Frame Cluster. And I want to realign this text so that it is centered with the page. Photoshop has nice alignment tools at the top. GIMP has alignment tools as well. And then I'm just going to layer, flatten image, save it as a JPEG or a PNG, doesn't matter. Call it, I'm going to save it in the right folder. and I'm going to call it the name of my item, so vintage frame cluster. Save that. Then I'm going to save my working file before I close Photoshop so I can come back and edit this if I need to. I think I'm done with Photoshop. I think. Yeah. So coming back over here, upload the vendor picture, and then that is ready. Now it's all ready to be packaged, which I'm placing into this one from a couple months ago. This is my board that I use for my group gifts. So drag that onto there. Change the color of this bow. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I need to make a better bow. This one's really bad, but I just never have the time to do that. So now I'm going to delete the contents of this and update it with the new contents. What I generally do for creating or for packaging my stuff is I will open two inventory windows, which there's a little suitcase icon that you can click to open a second inventory so that I can go back and forth dragging things into folders. So I'm going to go into my group gifts folder on the left side and create a folder for this new gift. I'm going to call it vintage cluster. This is what I do for every single new item that I put out, even gotchas, whatever. This is how I do it. And then I'm going to drag this, the add texture, into that folder. Make sure that permissions on it are what I want them to be. Full perms is okay for that. Then I want to copy over the landmarks for my store, the current landmarks for my store. So I'm going to go to my favorites folder and I'm going to choose my store landmarks, right click and copy because I don't want to drag them from their favorites location, and right click and paste into that folder. So now people can get to my store. And then I want to also copy a note card from a previous group gift. Sometimes I copy note cards instead of making new ones. It's up to you how you want to do that. Right click and that one's got poses in it. Where's another one that's just a simple object? Like, I think this is okay. This is a little bit old, so I'll have to update some information in there, but paste it in here, rename it to the item. You don't have to include note cards with your items, but I always have and always will. Cluster info. And inside there, I like to just put the details, what the land impact is, the permissions, and at its original mesh, it is coming up at 4 Li. So let me change that to Li. And then it's got resize on it. It is copyable. I do my group gifts copy, no transfer. And what else do I need to update? My website is now .com, so I'll update that. Always keep your information up to date for people to be able to find you and follow you. Everything else is good. Now I just need to drag over my frame into the package, and there it is. And that's ready to drag into the contents of my gift board. So I'm going to drag over everything. Actually, I'm going to delete this old note in there. Drag the contents over. And this board is scripted so that only group members can touch it and receive the gift. You can hand out your group gifts however you want or whatever. So that is how to do that. I need to rename the board to the right item. Gift. And then I'm going to take this into my inventory, close everything out for now, and go down to my store so I can place it. Here's my store, which takes a while to res because I have a lot of mesh and things up here. But at the entrance there are a lot of boards for the events that I do and my current releases for events and things like that. They're still resing, but anyway, coming over here to my store. This takes too long sometimes, so I will run over. And here's my little store, and over here is where I keep my gifts. So I'm just going to res the gift board, and I'm going to make sure it's in my group so that when people touch it, they will have the right group activated. And I don't think it resed. Sometimes it takes a while for things to res. In the meantime, I'm going to delete, well, I'm going to copy the location of this old picnic table set because I'm going to move the other one down. Sometimes I like to leave two gift groups out, or group gifts out at a time. So I'm going to just copy the location on this one, copy, and then I'm going to delete that, and then I'm going to paste the location down there, and then I'm going to take the rotation on this one, put it on this one, copy the location on that, paste it on that, and then just move it up so that it's nice and even. And I did have two copies res by accident. And let me double check the group on that is not the right group. So change it to my Aries Dollhouse group, which is where is my group? There it is. And there is that. So it's all set. It's ready for people to come and touch the board to receive the gift. I did forget to mention, of course, because I tend to leave stuff out, that I forgot to do the last step, step 11, which is to announce the item. So I'm going to go to my store group, create a new notice, and call it new group gift vintage frame cluster. And just type my message out. Normally I would have my manager do this, but since I'm doing the video, I'll do it now. Vintage frame cluster, and here's the SLURL for that, and then I'm gonna attach the ad for that so they can see what it looks like, and if they want to come down and get it, they can. And then I'm gonna send that out. And that is how I do my entire process from start to finish in general for most projects that I do, including mesh. So it was a lot, but I got through it, and this video is going to be forever long. But if you have any questions pertaining to any of the parts of this process, just ask, let me know, send me a message, or leave me a comment. And I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope it was able to help you, give you an idea of a brief overview of how the project process can be for whatever it is you want to make. Thank you for watching. Bye.